Super Mario, Legend of Zelda, Final Fantasy. Those are some of the most iconic video games in the world. Besides being made in Japan, they all have 3 things in common. Did you spot any? I'll give you a hint. 1 is about design, 1 relates to psychology, and 1 connects with the Japanese game business strategy. I've researched the evolution of Nintendo since 1889, dug into meta-research articles, and found interesting patterns across some of the most played Japanese video games. Start from level 1, where it all began. When you think of the 1800s, what comes to mind? Wars fought by Napoleon? Invention of the telephone? Horse carriages? But what about Nintendo? That's right, in 1889, Nintendo was born as a card company. Hanafuda translates to flower cards and is a Japanese playing card. Did you know that once these cards were actually illegal? During the Kensei era, leaders were traditionalists and they hated the concept of gambling, so Hanafuda cards were banned. During the West-inspired Meiji era, Emperor Meiji was more chill and he lifted the ban. Nintendo took this chance and went to work. But its video game glory did not start until 1989. With this fresh card business, Nintendo employed a bunch of people to come manufacture these cards. One day, one of these employees sat on a bullet train, a Shinkansen, and looked across the aisle. He saw a businessman, bored out of his mind, poking at a calculator. And in that moment, history was made. This employee was Gunpei Yakoi, and after that train ride, he invented the Game Boy.
All you need is a Game Boy. It's a personal game-playing system with over 200 puzzle, action, and sports games to choose from.
People immediately became obsessed. They played them, brought them everywhere, started licking them.
Brings back so many memories. Yeah, that taste. Remember when you used to suck on your Game Boy? Or is it just me? All right.
This square little thing, which you can touch, feel, and hold, became one of the world's greatest obsessions. Why was it so special? Following the Game Boy, we see Nintendo DS, Nintendo Switch. Do you notice the one thing that they all have in common? They're physical gaming devices that you can hold and bring with you wherever you go. When the iPhone came along, the Japanese companies went, "We're not going to adapt all things to the iPhone. Let's keep things physical." Turns out, there's a specific cultural reason for that. Monozukuri, a Japanese term that refers to the art of making things, of manufacturing. I'll let Mayuko explain this.
Japan definitely has a bias towards monozukuri, or creating things that you can touch and feel. And so innovation is going to thrive in places where there's something physical about it, like a physical object, more so than something like a digital software.
That makes sense. When you're thinking Japanese technology, you're probably thinking of something tangible. Robots, fancy mini toasters, self-heating toilets.
はい、トイレ。トイレの水を流して。
There's a bias in Japanese culture to produce things that are physical, and that's why Japanese tech feels so Japanese. They're incredibly unique. In Times Square, we have billboards and flat screens that display things digitally. But then you go to Osaka and you see this. This is me in Osaka, feeling in my element. Everything is just so physical. In video games, Monozukuri engages players' sense of touch, making the experience incredibly immersive. But physicality is only one reason that makes Japanese video games so addictive, right? There has to be more. Why can't I stop playing? You are correct. Monozukuri is far from the final boss. Time to level up and see something much more impactful. Gaming psychology.
アーティストとか言われるそういう人たちがリードして作るようになったのが多分僕の世代だと思う。
This is Shigeru Miyamoto, the guy who gave birth to Mario, The Legend of Zelda, Donkey Kong. This is his take on what makes a video game great.
やっぱりね達成感だと思うんですね。で達成感にはいろんなことがあると思うんですけど、一つはクリアするっていうボスを倒すとかゴールに行くという達成感もあるんですけども
Miyamoto is onto something. Meta-analysis research papers have found that the best games are highly interactive, deliberately generating tension between the degree of control the story imposes and the player's freedom of interaction. Essentially, The players hold the perception they have free will, even though at any time their options are actually quite limited. This is the illusion of choice.
Remember, all I'm offering is the truth, nothing more.
How do Japanese games create a challenging yet rewarding environment while guiding them to locations or people that actually advance the story? This was one of the greatest challenges faced by Nintendo when creating The Legend of Zelda: The Breath of the Wild. In order to lead the players to the right places, they designed mountains to cover specific checkpoints so that players have to explore and move around to find what they need. And once the player finds the boss and defeats them, they feel rewarded. And it feels like they made all these decisions based on their own autonomy. Well done, Nintendo. Well done. In UX and software design, we aim for high user satisfaction. Tell me something more satisfying than taming a wild horse in Zelda.
L.
But what makes Japanese games so addictive doesn't stop there. Let's turn off our Switch, take a step back, and look at the Japanese game business strategy and how that's different to the game development philosophy in the United States. Japan is a risk-averse culture. What this means is that each game, before their release into the market, will take a lot of time, testing, iterations, and sharp scrutiny. This is Dennis, a game director.
We had a game design document this thick for Eternal Darkness. It was massive. It had the story, it had all the game design. We went to Japan to get it approved. First thing Miyamoto-san said is, I'm not reading anything. Give me a controller and I'll tell you if we're going to move forward. And that's development-driven philosophies. There are few companies who do that. Nintendo's one of them. There are others out there.
Actually, let's take a trip into the office.
Excuse me, can I ask you guys some questions?
はい、大丈夫ですよ。
So, what do you do?
今僕ら鉄拳7っていうゲームを作ってます。私の仕事は鉄拳7のゲームディレクターです。
Damn, they're really chill about it.
Can I get a peek at what you're working on?
シークレットです。
Oh wow, they have a real deal Tekken 7 machine found at game centers right next to their work desks. I guess testing character functionality is part of a day's work for these developers. Or maybe this is how they settle arguments in the office.
What they're doing here is known in the tech world as dog fooding. Using your own product as if you were a user before releasing it into the public, aka employee product testing, aka eating your own dog food. So this process of iteration after iteration, taking their time, means a higher quality product. Also, Japanese culture being risk averse doesn't mean that they don't value creativity. When creativity calls, the Japanese will answer. In the West, gaming companies do things a little differently. They start a bunch of projects, end a bunch of projects, start a bunch, end a bunch. Some games are big successes, but many others fail. This approach is more experimental, and it certainly has worked. The point is, there is no right or wrong way to game development. And part of the reason why is because of culture. Another strategy that we cannot dismiss is the level of storytelling in Japanese games. In East Asian culture, we see a form of holistic thinking. When a story is told, a holistic thinker often thinks of the relationship between a character and their environment. Forget animes and mangas. In games, we see full-fledged plots and stories. We see this guy a lot, right? Have you ever wondered, where is Mario from?
Miyamoto based the story on the love triangle in Popeye, between a bad guy, a hero, and a damsel in distress. But since Nintendo couldn't secure the rights to use those characters, Miyamoto replaced them with a gorilla, a carpenter, and his girlfriend. In later games, that carpenter became a plumber, and his name changed from Mr. Video to Jumpman, and then to Mario, after this guy, the landlord of a Nintendo warehouse near Seattle.
This is one of the first times where we see a game's character, plot, story, all developed before the actual programming of the game. In Japan, storytelling is not just in games. They're everywhere. In front of vending machines or in partnership with a chocolate brand, stories are told everywhere. Bruce Lee once said, "Art is communication of feelings." When these game designers create these beautiful masterpieces that render a player completely immersed, they want the players to feel awe, curiosity, adventurous. So when you create something, what feelings are you trying to convey? What story are you trying to tell?